On a quiet planet far from the bustling centers of intergalactic travel, there lived a mechanic named Daniel. He was a simple man, content with his solitary life in a small town, fixing broken machines and keeping to himself. His garage, filled with tools and old parts, was his sanctuary. Daniel had never dreamed of anything more than a peaceful existence, until one fateful evening changed everything. It was just another ordinary day when Daniel heard the sound. A deep thunderous crash that seemed to shake the very ground beneath his feet. At first he thought it was nothing more than a passing meteorite, but something about it felt different. He quickly dropped his tools and rushed outside to investigate. As he ran towards the source of the noise, his heart raced. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple as the setting sun dipped below the horizon. But what caught Daniel's attention was the smoke rising in the distance, thick and dark. It wasn't a meteorite. Whatever had fallen from the sky was much more substantial. As he approached, Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. There, half buried in a field, was a ship unlike anything he had ever seen. The craft was sleek, metallic, and it shimmered with strange alien patterns. The hull was cracked open in several places, but it was still intact. It was no ordinary spacecraft. It was far beyond anything that humanity had ever built. Daniel hesitated for a moment, the reality of the situation sinking in. He was no stranger to mechanical work, but this ship, this was something else entirely. It was a mystery, a puzzle that he couldn't ignore. His curiosity pushed him forward, and he carefully stepped closer to the wreckage. That's when he saw them. Two figures were stumbling out of the broken ship, their movements unsteady. At first, Daniel thought they were injured, but then he realized they were much more than human. They were tall, graceful, and their skin shimmered in the fading light, pale and almost translucent, with an otherworldly glow. They were beautiful, yet there was a look of fear in their eyes. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, stepping forward, cautiously. The two alien girls froze, their gazes locking onto him. For a moment it seemed like they didn't understand his words, but then one of them spoke in a voice that was soft yet clear. "Please, help us," she said, her accent strange, yet the words were unmistakable. "Our ship is broken. We need assistance." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had always been a fixer, but this was something entirely new. He wasn't sure what was happening, but the look in their eyes told him they were desperate. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling down to get a better look at the damage. "The storm." The second girl spoke up, her voice tinged with fear. "We were caught in it. Our systems failed. And now, we're stranded." The first girl turned to her twin, and Daniel noticed how identical they were. Their features were flawless, and their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. But it was the way they looked at him, as if he was their last hope, that caught him off guard. I can try to help," Daniel said, more to himself than to them. "I don't know if I can fix this, but I'll give it a shot." The twins exchanged a glance, their expressions softening. They looked exhausted, their energy drained from the crash and the journey that had led them here. But there was something in their eyes, a glimmer of hope that made Daniel feel like he couldn't walk away. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending his hand. "I'm a mechanic. I'll do what I can." The first twin hesitated for a moment before taking his hand. "I'm Lyra," she said, her grip surprisingly firm. "This is my sister Lyra. We don't know what to do without our ship. It's our only way home." Daniel nodded, trying to hide the confusion swirling in his mind. He had never encountered anything like this before. Twin alien girls, stranded on a strange planet with a wrecked ship. It sounded like something out of a dream, but here they were, standing before him, looking to him for help. "I'll do what I can," he repeated, his voice steady. "But I need to take a look at the damage." The twins stepped aside, allowing him to approach the ship. As he examined the wreckage, Daniel's mind raced. There was nothing about this ship that he recognized. Its technology was advanced, far beyond anything Earth had ever produced. Yet something about it felt familiar, as if it was meant for him to repair it. "Can you help us?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have no one else." Daniel turned to face them, his thoughts spinning. The idea of fixing something so alien, so beyond his understanding, was daunting. But he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward them. There was something magnetic about the twins. Something that made him feel like this was his chance to be part of something greater than himself. "I'll try," he said, his voice determined. With that, he set to work. Daniel stood in front of the alien ship, feeling both awe and nervousness. The ship was beautiful, but it was also incredibly damaged. Parts of the hull were torn open, revealing strange, glowing circuits beneath. The ship had obviously been built with technology far beyond anything he had ever seen. Daniel had fixed cars, motorcycles, and even some old space equipment in his time. But this was different. He knew he wasn't just fixing a machine, and he was trying to repair something from another world. "Where do I even start?" he muttered to himself, crouching down and touching one of the damaged panels. It was cool to the touch, and the metal seemed to hum faintly as if it were alive. He ran his fingers along the surface, trying to understand its structure. Lyra and Lyra stood beside him, watching intently. They seemed calm, but Daniel could see the worry in their eyes. Their ship was their lifeline, and without it, they were stranded on a strange world. He could see how much they depended on it, and somehow that made him want to try even harder. "We'll help," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with determination. Daniel looked up at her, surprised. "You can help?" he asked. Lyra stepped forward and nodded. "We may not understand your technology, but we can assist you in any way we can." He smiled at their willingness to help, despite knowing nothing about Earth's machinery. He thought for a moment, then pointed to a broken panel near the ship's engine. "Let's start here. I'll need your help to lift it. It looks like the damage is mostly structural." The twins nodded and approached the panel. As they worked together, Daniel showed them how to lift and move the heavy metal, using tools he had in his workshop. They were quick learners, following his instructions with ease. It was clear they were highly intelligent, despite their lack of knowledge about human technology. As they worked, Daniel couldn't help but notice how synchronized they were. They moved together, almost like they were one person in two bodies. There was an unspoken bond between them that went beyond mere words. Daniel had never seen anything like it before, and it made him feel even more connected to them. They spent hours working, and as the evening light began to fade, Daniel started to make progress. He had managed to patch up a few holes in the hull, and was beginning to repair the ship's engine. The twins had helped him by holding tools, carrying parts, and even offering advice, though most of it was in their alien language. Daniel didn't understand their words, but there was something in the tone of their voices that reassured him. They had confidence in him, and that was all he needed to keep going. "You're doing well," Lyra said, her voice full of praise. "We're lucky you found us." Daniel paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm just doing what I can, but this ship, it's something else. I've never seen anything like it. It's going to take time." Lyra smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll be patient. We know you'll fix it. You have a special gift." Daniel wasn't sure about the gift part, but the praise felt good. He couldn't deny that he was starting to enjoy the challenge. The ship was like a puzzle, and with each piece he fixed, he felt a sense of accomplishment. More than that, though, it was the twins' gratitude that fueled him. They were relying on him, and that gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't realized he'd been missing. As the night wore on, Daniel's hands began to ache from the work. He had always been used to manual labor, but this was different. Every twist of the wrench, every adjustment he made on the ship, felt like it mattered more than it ever had before. There was no going back now. He had committed himself to this mission, and the twins had trusted him. "You're doing great," Lyra said again, this time more softly. Daniel looked up at her, wiping his hands on his shirt. "Thanks. I think we're almost there. A few more hours and I might be able to get the engine running again." "We believe in you," Lyra added, her voice sincere. Daniel felt a warm feeling in his chest. The connection he was building with these two alien girls was something he hadn't expected. They weren't just strangers from another world. They were individuals with their own hopes and fears. They weren't asking for him to fix the ship out of obligation. They were asking because they trusted him. As the night deepened, the ship's lights flickered back on. It wasn't fully repaired yet, but Daniel could hear the hum of the engine starting to work again. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. "We're getting there," Daniel said, his voice filled with relief. "This ship isn't going to be grounded much longer." Lyra stepped forward and placed a hand on the ship's smooth surface. "Thank you, Daniel. You've given us hope. We didn't know what we would do without you." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. It wasn't just about fixing the ship anymore. He had become part of their journey, and in doing so, he had found something he had been searching for all his life: a sense of belonging. "We're not done yet," Daniel said with a smile, "but we're getting closer, one step at a time." The twins smiled back at him, their eyes full of gratitude. They didn't just see him as a mechanic anymore. They saw him as someone who had made a difference in their lives. Daniel wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The following days passed quickly for Daniel as he continued working on the alien ship. The twins, Lyra and Lyra, stayed by his side, helping him with the repairs. Their trust in him was unwavering, and with each passing hour, Daniel found himself more determined to fix their ship. But despite the growing sense of accomplishment, something tugged at him deep inside, an unsettling feeling he couldn't shake. The ship was nearly functional again, and the engine was humming steadily, but Daniel couldn't ignore the nagging doubt in his mind. What would happen when the repairs were finished? The twins had mentioned their need to return home. But what about him? He couldn't just walk away from his life on Earth and join them on a journey across the galaxy. Could he? One evening, as the stars began to twinkle above them, Daniel sat on the hood of his truck gazing up at the sky. The quiet of the night surrounded him, and for the first time in a long while, he felt alone. The twins were busy inside the ship, but Daniel couldn't help but feel like he was standing on the edge of something unknown. "Hey!" Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to see her standing in the doorway of the ship. Her eyes were soft and her expression was thoughtful. "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay?" Daniel gave her a half smile, trying to push away the uncertainty that lingered in his chest. "I'm fine," he said, though he didn't fully believe it himself. "Just thinking." Lyra stepped outside and sat down next to him on the truck. "Thinking about what?" she asked gently. Daniel sighed. He had never been one to share his feelings easily, but something about the twins made him want to open up. Maybe it was because they weren't like anyone he had ever met before. They weren't just aliens, they were people, and they cared about him. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "I've been working on this ship, trying to get it back to its original state, and we're getting close, but the truth is, I don't know what happens after that. You two need to go home, right? And I'm not sure if I'm ready to leave everything behind." Lyra was quiet for a moment, as if considering his words. She reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a quiet comfort. "We understand," she said softly. "This has been a lot for you. We didn't expect you to fix our ship, let alone help us so much." Daniel felt a lump in his throat at her words. He had expected their gratitude, but not this deep sense of connection. He was just a mechanic. He had no idea what the future held, but this felt like more than just a job. "I'm not sure what to do," Daniel confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Part of me wants to finish the job and let you go, but another part of me doesn't want to say goodbye." Lyra's eyes softened and she gave a small, understanding smile. "We don't want to leave either," she said quietly. "We've come to depend on you. You've done more for us than anyone else ever has, and it's not just about fixing the ship. It's about the bond we've formed." Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. He had never been good at expressing his feelings, but the twins had made it easy to care for them. There was something about their innocence and strength that drew him in. They were far from home, far from everything they knew, and yet they trusted him with their lives. "I've never felt like this before," Daniel admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I've been alone for so long. And now, you two, you've made me feel like I matter. Lyra, who had been standing just inside the ship, came over and joined them. She sat beside Lyra, her eyes meeting Daniel's. You do matter, she said, her voice firm but gentle. You've given us more than just your skills. You've given us something we didn't know we needed. Hope. Hope that things can be different, that we can have something more than just survival. Daniel didn't know how to respond. The twins' words resonated deeply with him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths were meant to be different. They were from another world and he was just a mechanic on Earth. How could he fit into their life? How could he leave everything behind? But as he looked at their faces, Lyra's bright eyes and Lyra's gentle smile, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. Do you have to leave? Daniel asked quietly. He wasn't sure if he could bear to let them go. Lyra looked at Lyra, and for a moment they seemed to communicate without words. Then, Lyra turned back to Daniel and smiled softly. We don't want to leave, but our home is far away. We have responsibilities, we must return. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest at her words. He had known that the twins needed to return to their planet, but hearing it out loud made it feel so final. He didn't want this chapter of his life to end. We'll never forget you, Daniel, Lyra said, her voice sincere. You've changed our lives and we'll always be grateful. The weight of their words hit him harder than he expected. The connection they shared was real, and it had become something deeper than just a simple repair job. They were no longer just strangers. They were a part of his life, and he was a part of theirs. As the stars twinkled above them, Daniel made a decision. He didn't know what the future held, but he wasn't ready to let go. He would finish the repairs and help the twins return home. But there was a part of him that wanted more. He wanted to see where this bond could take them. He wanted to explore the stars with them and maybe, just maybe, find his place in the vast, unknown universe. The following days flew by faster than Daniel had anticipated. The work on the ship was almost complete, and every time he made a new adjustment, the ship seemed to hum with life. The twins, Lyra and Lyra, had helped him every step of the way. They were quick learners, and their natural curiosity about Earth's technology made the process smoother. Yet, even with all the progress, Daniel couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had lingered in his chest ever since they started working together. The ship was ready. The engine purred like a well-tuned machine, and the outer hull was solid once again. The lights inside the ship flickered to life, casting a soft glow throughout the control room. Everything was operational, and in a few hours, the twins would finally be able to leave Earth and head back to their home planet. Daniel stood in the center of the hangar, staring at the ship with a mixture of pride and sadness. He had done it. He had fixed the impossible. He had repaired a ship from another world, something that no one else would have been able to do. But as the ship's systems powered up, the finality of the situation began to set in. The twins had been his constant companions over the past few weeks, and the thought of them leaving left him with a sense of emptiness he couldn't ignore. Lyra and Lyra approached, standing beside him in silence. They both looked at the ship, their expressions filled with gratitude. You've done it, Lyra said softly. Her voice was full of awe, and Daniel could see the relief in her eyes. It's ready. Daniel nodded, though his throat felt tight. I never thought I'd actually pull it off, he said with a small smile. But it seems like you two were the real motivators. Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing in the soft light. We couldn't have done it without you. You gave us hope when we had none. Daniel swallowed, his mind racing. He knew this was the moment when they would leave, and he would have to face the reality of his decision. The ship was fixed and their journey home was about to begin. So when do you leave? Daniel asked, his voice sounding distant even to himself. Lyra looked at him, her expression softening. We can leave whenever you're ready, but... She trailed off, and Daniel turned to look at her. The hesitation in her voice caught his attention. But what? There's something we need to talk about, Lyra said quietly. Something we didn't tell you before. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. The twins had been open with him, but he could sense there was something more they hadn't shared. something that might change everything. Lyra stepped forward and placed a hand on his arm. "We don't want to leave," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We've come to care about you more than we expected. You've become a part of us." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "What are you saying?" he asked, unsure if he was ready to hear the answer. Lyra glanced at Lyra before looking back at him. "We've been thinking a lot about the future, and we want you to come with us." Daniel blinked, his mind struggling to process the words. "Come with you, where? To your planet?" Lyra nodded. "We don't want to go back alone. We've grown so attached to you, Daniel. You've made our journey more than just a mission. You've made it meaningful. We want you by our side." Daniel stood frozen for a moment, the weight of their words sinking in. He had never imagined this. He had been so focused on helping them fix the ship, he hadn't thought about what would happen afterward. But now, as the reality of their offer settled in, he couldn't deny that part of him longed to take that leap. "You're asking me to leave everything behind," Daniel said slowly, the thought making him feel both scared and excited. "Earth, my life here, everything." Lyra nodded. "We're not asking you to forget your life. We're asking you to join us in a new one. There's a place for you in our world, Daniel. A place where you would never be alone." Lyra's voice softened. "We can't promise that it will be easy, but we can promise that we'll face it together." Daniel looked at the ship, then back at the twins. Their faces were filled with sincerity, and their offer was genuine. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something greater, but at the same time the thought of leaving Earth, leaving everything he knew behind, filled him with fear. "I don't know if I can just leave everything behind," Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "My whole life is here, my home, my family, my work. But we could be your family now," Lyra said, her voice tender. "You've already become so important to us. Don't you see? You've changed our lives, Daniel." The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Daniel's mind raced as he thought about the future. Could he really leave his old life behind and step into the unknown with the twins? Could he truly become part of their world, their journey, and their people? The more Daniel thought about it, the more he realized he couldn't say no. The connection they had formed was too strong, and the adventure they promised was too alluring. I don't know what it will be like," Daniel said finally, his voice steady, "but I can't imagine my life without you two now. I'll go with you." Lyra's face lit up with a bright, joyous smile. Lyra reached over and hugged him tightly, her arms warm and reassuring. "You won't regret it," she said. Daniel felt a rush of emotions flood through him. Relief, excitement, and a deep sense of belonging. For the first time in years, he felt like he had found a place where he truly mattered. Not just as a mechanic, but as a person who had made a difference. The ship was ready, and now, Daniel was ready too. Ready to leave behind his old life and join the twins in the vast unknown, to face whatever challenges awaited them. Together. The decision had been made. Daniel had agreed to join the twins on their journey, but as he stood in front of the alien ship, ready to leave his old life, behind the air was thick with tension. He could feel the excitement of the unknown pulling him forward, but there was also a sense of dread gnawing at him. What would life be like in space? What would he leave behind? The twins were busy inside the ship, preparing for takeoff, but Daniel was still trying to come to terms with the reality of what he was about to do. He hadn't really thought it through. It wasn't until now that he realized how much his life would change. Earth, his home, seemed so far away already. As he stood there, lost in his thoughts, he heard the faint hum of engines starting up. It was the sound of the ship coming to life, and it was both comforting and intimidating at the same time. The twins had already begun the final checks, and everything was nearly ready for departure. Just as Daniel turned to walk toward the ship, a loud, sharp whine pierced the air. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and the faint glow of the ship's engines flickered out. "Not again." Lyra's voice sounded urgent from within the ship. Daniel rushed toward the hatch, his heart pounding in his chest. He had spent days preparing the ship, and now, on the brink of their departure, something had gone wrong. "What happened?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with concern. Lyra stood near the control panel looking flustered. "It's the power conduit. It's overloaded." She glanced at him, her expression tense. "We need to stabilize it, or the engine won't start. We'll be stuck here." Daniel's mind raced. This wasn't part of the plan. The repairs should have been enough to get them into orbit. But now, with this sudden malfunction, they might be grounded longer than expected. He took a deep breath, trying to focus. "I'll fix it," he said, his voice steady despite the rising panic inside him. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide with worry. "Are you sure? The systems are unlike anything you've ever seen. We might be too late." "I know," Daniel replied, walking past her. "But I'm not leaving you two stranded here, not now." With that, he moved into the heart of the ship, following the sound of the problem. He could feel the vibrations beneath his feet, a reminder of how much was at stake. The twins had placed their trust in him, and he wasn't about to fail them now. The control room was filled with strange glowing panels that flickered erratically. Daniel could see the power conduits sparking near the engine, and the system was dangerously close to overheating. Sweat trickled down his brow as he knelt beside the conduit, trying to make sense of the alien technology. The parts were unlike anything he had ever encountered, but Daniel's natural instinct to fix things kicked in. He reached into his toolbox, picking up a few tools that looked familiar. Though the ship's inner workings were foreign, the principles of engineering were universal. He had repaired many machines in his life, and he wasn't about to let this be the one he couldn't fix. "Stay calm," Daniel muttered to himself, his hands working quickly. He disconnected a few wires, trying to cool down the system. It was risky, but it was the only option. Behind him, he heard the twins talking in their alien language, but he didn't have time to focus on their words. He concentrated on the task at hand, tightening bolts and adjusting wires. The sparks were flying now, and he could feel the heat building around him. "Daniel!" Lyra's voice rang out again, this time with fear. "It's going to blow. Get away." But Daniel didn't move. He was too close now. The only thing that mattered was fixing the conduit. He could do this. He took a deep breath, and with one final twist, he reconnected the power line. The ship shuddered, and the lights flickered back to life. For a brief moment, Daniel held his breath. Had he done it? Then, with a low hum, the engine sputtered back into life. The power system stabilized, and the ship's lights glowed steadily. It was working. Daniel let out a long sigh of relief, wiping his sweaty hands on his pants. He stood up slowly, turning to see the twins standing behind him, their eyes filled with awe. "You did it," Lyra said, her voice full of wonder. "You really did it." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. "I told you I wouldn't let you down." Lyra stepped forward, her expression softening. "We never doubted you, but you've risked so much. Why?" Daniel looked at them both, feeling a deep sense of connection. "I guess I'm not ready to let go," he said quietly. "I don't want to leave either. Not yet." The twins exchanged a glance, and for a moment everything around them seemed to fade away. There were no words necessary between them. They all understood each other completely. The ship hummed steadily as it prepared for takeoff, and the doors slowly closed, sealing Daniel, Lyra, and Lyra inside. The vast unknown lay ahead of them, and they were ready to face it together. As the engines powered up, the ship began to lift off the ground. The world below them seemed to shrink as they soared into the sky, leaving Earth behind. Daniel didn't look back. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back now. The galaxy was waiting, and Daniel was ready to explore it with the twins by his side. The stars outside the ship glowed brightly, their distant light illuminating the control room where Daniel sat. The hum of the engines filled the air, and for the first time, Daniel felt the true weight of what he had just agreed to. The ship was moving through space, leaving Earth behind, and the journey ahead was uncertain. Beside him, Lyra and Lyra worked together to monitor the ship's systems, their graceful movements, fluid and natural. They seemed at ease in this new environment, but Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing, and that he was changing with it. He had made his choice. He had decided to leave Earth behind and travel with the twins to their home planet. But now, as the stars stretched out before them, Daniel wondered what this new life would be like. Was he truly ready to abandon everything he had known? Was this the right decision? Are you all right? Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, and Daniel turned to see her looking at him with concern. She had noticed the unease in his expression. "I'm fine," Daniel said quickly, trying to reassure her. "Just thinking." Lyra, who had been studying the star charts on the nearby screen, glanced over at him. "You don't have to worry, Daniel," she said softly. "You've made the right choice. We're glad you're with us." Her words were comforting, but they also made Daniel feel even more conflicted. He had left everything behind. His family, his home, his life on Earth, to join them on a journey across the stars. The twins had become a part of his life in a way he hadn't expected. They had become more than just strangers he had helped. They were his companions now, his friends. But was that enough? Was that enough to leave his old life behind for good? The question lingered in his mind as he watched the stars pass by. The ship was traveling faster than anything Daniel had ever seen, and the silence in the room seemed to stretch on forever. The weight of the decision he had made seemed heavier now that they were actually on their way. There was no turning back. He had committed to this path, and he couldn't help but wonder if he was making a mistake. Lyra seemed to sense his inner turmoil. She moved closer to him, sitting, down beside him with a soft sigh. "Daniel," she said gently, "I know this isn't easy. It's a big change, and I understand why you're feeling uncertain. But I promise you, you won't be alone in this. We'll be by your side every step of the way." Daniel looked at her, searching her eyes for reassurance. "I know, I'm not sure what to expect. Everything is so different. I've never even imagined a life like this." Lyra joined them, her voice filled with understanding. "It's normal to feel that way. The unknown is always scary, but you're not the only one facing something new. We're in this together and we'll help you adjust. Our world. It's unlike anything you've ever seen, but you'll be a part of it, Daniel. You belong with us." The sincerity in their voices warmed his heart, but the doubt was still there, lingering at the back of his mind. Could he truly belong to a world so different from his own? Could he leave behind everything he knew and embrace this new life? "I'm not so sure," Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've lived my whole life on Earth. This..." He waved a hand toward the window, where the stars were spread out before them. "This is all so much to take in." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a gentle smile. "It's okay to feel unsure. We understand. But we want you to be a part of our world. We want you to be with us, Daniel. You're not just a mechanic to us. You're more than that." Lyra nodded in agreement. "You've become a part of us, whether you realize it or not. And we won't ask you to make this journey alone." Daniel took a deep breath, trying to clear the fog in his mind. He had been running on autopilot for so long, focusing only on the repairs and the tasks at hand. But now, as the ship sailed farther into the unknown, the reality of what he had done and what it meant for his future began to settle in. He had made a choice, and now he had to face it. "I don't know if I can ever truly leave everything behind," Daniel confessed, his voice filled with vulnerability. "But I also don't know if I want to go back to the life I had. Maybe this is where I'm meant to be." Lyra and Lyra shared a look before turning their gazes back to him. Their expressions were soft, understanding, and full of hope. They didn't need to say anything more. They had already accepted him, and in return he knew he had to accept this new path. The fear of the unknown would always be there, but he couldn't let it control him. "I'm with you," Daniel said, finally, his voice steady. "I'm with you both. Whatever happens next, I'll face it with you. The twins smiled, their faces lighting up with genuine happiness. In that moment, Daniel felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The uncertainty was still there, but it no longer felt as overwhelming. He had made his choice. And now, it was time to move forward. The ship continued its journey through space, and for the first time, Daniel felt a sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he wouldn't face them alone. The twins were with him, and together, they would navigate the vastness of the stars. The days in space were both exhilarating and overwhelming. Daniel found himself constantly learning, adapting to life aboard the ship with Lyra and Lyra. The alien technology that surrounded him was still foreign, but he was slowly becoming accustomed to it. Each day brought new discoveries and new challenges. And with every moment, the twins showed him more of their world, their culture, their stories, their people. It was strange at first. Daniel had always been a solitary person, and now he was part of something far bigger than anything he could have ever imagined. The feeling of being on this ship, traveling through the vast expanse of space, was like living in a dream. There were moments when Daniel would catch himself staring out of the window, marveling at the stars stretching out forever. The sight never grew old. One evening, after spending hours working with Lyra on the ship's maintenance, Daniel took a break and found himself alone in the observation deck. The ship was quiet now, its engines humming steadily, and the soft lights of the control room flickered in the background. Daniel leaned against the window, gazing out at the endless stretch of stars. For the first time in his life, he felt small, but in a way that was oddly comforting. The universe was so vast, so full of possibilities, and yet here he was, part of it. "You're thinking again?" A voice broke his thoughts. Daniel turned to find Lyra standing behind him, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. He smiled and shrugged. "I guess I do that a lot these days." Lyra stepped closer and looked out the window, following his gaze. "I know how you feel. When we first left our planet, I was overwhelmed too. It was hard to imagine what was waiting for us out there." Daniel nodded, looking down at his hands. "I never thought I'd be here. It all feels so different." "That's okay," Lyra said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's a big change, but I think it's a good one. You're finding your place." Daniel looked at her, searching her eyes for reassurance. "I hope so." "We all are," Lyra said with a smile. "No one knows what the future holds, but we're in it together. That's what matters." Just then, Lyra entered the room, her footsteps light on the metal floor. She looked at them both, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "What are you two doing here?" she asked playfully. "We were just talking," Lyra said, her voice warm, "about how much this all means. To us, and to Daniel." Lyra walked over and stood beside Daniel, looking out at the stars with him. "You're part of this journey now, Daniel," she said softly. "You're not just with us for the ride, you belong here." Daniel's heart warmed at her words. For a long time he had felt like an outsider, like he didn't belong anywhere. But now, with the twins by his side, he felt different. He had a place. He had a purpose. It wasn't just about fixing things anymore. It was about something bigger, about being part of a family. "I'm glad I'm here," Daniel said quietly. "I've never felt like this before." The twins smiled, their expressions filled with understanding. They knew what he meant. It wasn't just about traveling to another planet. It was about connection, about finding something he never knew he needed. "Maybe one day," Lyra said, her voice full of thought, "we'll go back to our planet, but even then things will be different. We're different. And you're a part of that change." Daniel looked at her, his mind still processing everything. "I'm ready for whatever comes next, with you two." The three of them stood there, looking out at the stars, each one lost in their thoughts. It wasn't just the ship or the galaxy that felt new. It was everything that had led them here, the decisions, the risks, the bonds they had formed. Daniel had never imagined that something as simple as fixing a broken ship could lead him to a place where he truly felt like he belonged. "We've got a lot of adventures ahead of us," Lyra said with a grin, breaking the silence. "And I'm sure we'll face some tough challenges, but with you by our side, I know we can handle anything." Daniel smiled back, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about the past. He wasn't worrying about what he had left behind. He was thinking about the future, and the future was bright. The twins stepped back, and Daniel followed them to the control room. They had a new course to chart, new places to explore. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was no longer a burden. It was an opportunity for growth, for discovery, for finding their way in the universe together. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, Daniel looked out the window once more. He didn't know exactly where they were headed, but for the first time he didn't need to. He had found his place, and that was enough. With Lyra and Lyra by his side, there was nothing he couldn't face. The galaxy was full of unknowns, but together, they were ready to conquer whatever came their way.